August. We're finally getting the workshops going. But I have a whole lineup of workshops planned for the fall season, and this is the kickoff. And I think that August and late summer is a really great time to talk about the immune system, because we get to stay ahead of what ends up being really sort of a whirlwind time of year for a lot of families, with little ones going back to school, getting out of the summer rhythm, and then usually promptly thereafter, the cycle of wintertime sickness. So we're gonna roll through this. I'm gonna try to keep the sort of presentation portion, 30 to 40 minutes or under, so we've got time for Q&A afterwards. So we get you guys all out of here, within the hour, so you guys can go back to your families and dinner and whatever else you have planned for the evening. We do have Rachel and Paris here who are helping hands if you want, a hand with your little ones so that you can go pee, or if they want to color with the coloring table. We have toys in all of the rooms as well, so you're welcome to go into one of these rooms and grab some toys. Our patients know they're underneath the benches, but definitely feel free to let your kids be kids. They don't have to be silent. We'll let them play and let them be entertained during the course of this workshop. And I'm excited for us all to learn more about how to support our children holistically, naturally. That's why you're all here. So I want to share with you first a little bit about how my paradigm on health, especially as it pertains to children's health, shifted. When I grew up, we very much were a traditional Western medicine household, which I would define as you experience any sort of symptom or ache or pain, and we wanted to just take the medication to remove the ache or the pain right away. And a lot of my friends grew up the same way, and we would get sick and we would deal with all the things that were very common but not necessarily normal, and that's just what our family knew to do. My mom did have a lot of mindfulness about what we ate. We definitely weren't allowed to have any fun snacks in the house. I remember going to my friend Heather Hyatry. She was my best friend growing up, and she had this snacker that had Gusher, all of the good Capri Suns, all the amazing stuff that I wasn't allowed to have at home, and I would just binge it. So my mom had some elements of healthy living, and she had a concept of health, but it was partial. And I had a best friend growing up whose parents were both chiropractors. And it was interesting having my own experience with my sisters and our household, and then observing her experience with her chiropractic parents, doing a lot of those same elements. They're also eating healthy foods. They're also using the weird white toothpaste that isn't your normal Crest toothpaste, and the natural deodorants and whatnot, but they would hardly ever get sick. And when they would get sick, they would bounce back so quickly. And their entire philosophy in their household, they were kind of like the weirdos at school. And I remember getting sick at one point, and I was maybe on day 2 or 3. I was home from school, and I remember we were talking about getting together, me and my friend. And the mom was like, "Oh yeah, you can come on over." And I remember being so weirded out by that, and being "I can come over when I'm sick." And they were just no, they were so certain in the ability of their family to do everything that they do to control their environment, keep their immune system strong. But even though I was recovering from a cold or whatever it was, I don't really remember, I just definitely do remember being that's really interesting. That is definitely not the way I've ever thought about germs or illness or sickness. And they had this just inherent trust in their bodies and the way that they went about things. And the girls got adjusted. I watched them get adjusted all the time. So they had this missing piece that I got to observe and really see the day-to-day changes growing up over, 10 years with their daughters, and then now it's been, 20 plus years that we've been friends. And their parents influenced me to be a chiropractor. It's been a really beautiful interwoven story, but I started getting adjusted not until I was in college from this chiropractic family that was just sort of a sub-influence in my life. And I remember that first winter after I started getting adjusted, I didn't get sick. And I would always get sick, at least once in the winter, probably 3 to 4 times. And I was in college, I was getting pretty much year-round. I was trashing my body. But I remember being that's interesting. I came home from winter break, and always on the breaks I would get sick, right? I'd be yay, I've got time off, I can rest. Never mind, I'm just going to be sick for 2 weeks. I didn't get sick. I was that's interesting. Then, going to chiropractic school, I'm going to skip parts of the story, obviously, but I landed in chiropractic school, and I learned about the human body, and I learned about the immune system and how it develops and how it coincides with neurological development in children. And it completely shifted my worldview and the way that I look and think about my own body and the way that I raise my son and the way that we approach things. And just a quick aside, I will let my husband share his own story at some other point, but he got adjusted as a baby for ear infections, and he grew up going to a chiropractor. And even he, once we sort of found each other in chiropractic school, hearing about his upbringing, noticing the way that his immune system functioned and the way that his family approached things like philosophically versus the way that my family approached things, I was like, there's such a difference here. And a lot of people didn't think about it because we're just doing the default of what we were raised and what our parents did, and we're doing the best we can with the information we have available. So, all that being said, it's been a long journey, and I certainly don't know all the answers now. I'm still learning things every day, and I can't stop learning because I'm just obsessed with this stuff now. Because the more you learn about it, you're like, this is cool. What else did I think I knew that I actually don't know anything about? And I've maybe been lied to. It's been a fun journey. So I really just want to share with you guys some things that have really moved the needle for me in my life, and things that I've seen be really impactful with patients of ours and families that we've cared for over the years. So, that being said, we're going to talk about the immune system. I'm going to share with you 4 basic pillars of health that are foundational. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you, yes, some like tips and tricks. People come to this workshop being like, okay, give me like the secret. Give me the magic hack that is going to, solve the immune system challenges. And alas, there's no magic hack. However, there are different tools that we can have in our toolbox that we can use when needed. A lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight, you may already know about. They're probably not going to be things that you're like, what? I've never heard of that before. There might be. However, even if we're already doing a lot of the right things, like my mom was doing a lot of the right things, the sequence in which we do things is really, really, really key. And I think sometimes we just throw everything that we know at a problem. Child gets sick, you're like, we'll do the elderberry, and we're going to do this, and am I supposed to do this, and am I supposed to use a humidifier? You just do everything that you know, and you throw it all there at once, and you're going to get inconsistent results. So I think about the order of operations from, do you guys remember PEMDAS? Okay. What did you guys learn PEMDAS stood for, by the way? Because I feel like there's different iterations.
Please excuse my dear.
Yeah, that's the one that we learned too. I feel like I heard a different version of that at some point along.
Parentheses,
Yep, parentheses, exponent. I should have looked this up before I mentioned it. But yeah, multiplication.
What it actually is.
Division. Yeah, and then the mnemonic, please excuse me, dear Aunt Sally. So like, you have an equation, you can have all the factors there, but in order to arrive at the precise solution, you've got to get things in the right order. And you'll find that as we go through this presentation, sequence matters a lot when it comes to the development of our children and their brains and their nervous systems. Also, on the page of talking about there being a lot of information, yeah, we're clapping. If anything, I really just want to simplify things for you guys because I think it can be very overwhelming. So even though health is and can be very complex, it can be very simple. However, it can be very hard to do the simple things, right? So that's why I want to break it down for you. So we're going to talk about the core 4. You guys, we're going to look at this at the very, very end. So if you want to flip it over and use it for note-taking, we will get to the immune system builders and the handout that I gave you that is yours to take home. But let's start by talking about these core 4 elements, many of which you may have already dialed in. Maybe you're doing 1 or 2 of these things consistently. You probably know all these things are good for you, but maybe we're not necessarily hitting all of them consistently and in the precise order. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the nervous system really being the boss. I describe the nervous system as like the mom of the body. It runs and coordinates everything that goes on in the body. And we cannot be healthy to our fullest potential without having a nervous system that is healthy and starting to be clear foundation. We're going to talk about how the nervous system develops and how that ties in with the development of the immune system. Movement, we all do better when we move our bodies. Certainly this is not more true than with our kids. When they move their bodies, they're going to get a better night's sleep. We know that movement is life. However, I want to really dive into why movement matters and is so critical in the first couple of years of life as it ties into how the immune system forms and develops. Sleep. This is a tricky one because we all know that it's great for us, but that doesn't mean that we're getting good sleep. And the nervous system plays a huge role in that. And then kids and chemicals don't mix. So living clean, not necessarily in the way that a lot of us think, which is like living sterile. It's very different from living clean and giving our body the right amount of healthy exposure to things in the environment that is going to strengthen. So the things that we're talking about are the ways in which we can influence our health, not just the way that our health is predetermined and that's our destiny, right? We've got genetics that set us up for certain things in life, and then we have epigenetics. Have you guys heard of epigenetics? This is like the way that we can influence our genetics. Because we can influence which genes turn on or off based on factors in our environment. So a lot of these things are within our realm of control more so than we think in terms of what gets turned on or off. So, you know, it's really, I could do an entire workshop on epigenetics, but this ties in just letting us know that some of these little daily habits that we do are influencing even things that we used to think were totally set in stone and they are just genetic destiny based on our DNA. So it's really cool how much we can really work with that and shift the narrative for our families and for our kids. Okay, so let's talk about neurodevelopment. When our bodies are developing, when children are growing up, the order in which they pass through different stages are so precise and so intentional. And I have this chart up here because it talks about the nervous system. It gives a little outline of which specific areas of the nervous system control specific functions in the body. And it's less important to know right now like which specific things each specific area controls, and more just to understand that different parts of the nervous system, which is, by the way, your brain, your brainstem, your spinal cord. It's so important that your body protects it with bone, which is your skull and your spine, right? This is your nervous system. It's signaling everything that we do throughout life. There's different portions of the nervous system that activate at different stages of development. So let's start from the beginning. When babies are really 0 to like 4 months old, what do? Nothing. Exactly. Nothing. Feel free to shout things out. I'm not going to try to trick you guys. There's no real wrong answers here, but like they don't really do anything. They don't really, you know, they're just sort of these squishy, sweet little love sacks, you know, and you have to do everything for them, which is why postpartum is such a grind, because you have to do everything for these beautiful, helpless creatures. Their immune systems are not working independently. They rely entirely on basically mom's immune system to provide them that support. And our bodies are really incredible in doing that. And we talked about this in our breast and support group, but like, it's so nuanced. And this is maybe something you've noticed with nursing, that if you're exposed to something, you have a cold or something, the color of your breast milk will actually change, because your body, just simply by like sniffing and kissing and being around your baby, is going to start to shift the ratio of certain immune protective components and cytokines inside the milk. So it's like a live feedback loop happening all the time, which is really incredible the way our bodies are designed. So we're designed to be able to get that protective immunity from our moms in the first 3 to 4 months of life. And we're really just eating, pooping, and sleeping. Eat, poop, sleep, repeat. Eat, poop, sleep, repeat. Eat, poop, sleep, repeat. However, sometimes in the first few months of life, babies are not eating, pooping, or sleeping on repeat. In fact, sometimes there's early stress in the nervous system and they never really mastered sleep, or they've had issues with latch, or they're not pooping and they're constipated. So development is sequential, and it's going to move forward in time no matter what. It's the way the body's programmed. But if we skip steps, we've got to kind of go back and catch up later. So each thing builds upon the last thing. And the expectation and the hope is that we are really solid in the one thing so we can really get to and master the next step. So the first step, 0 to 4 months, is we're floppy, squishy, sweet love blob. We don't have our own intrinsic really immune system doing much yet, not super activated. We're eating, pooping, sleep on repeat, hopefully. Then we can progress in the 4 to 6 month time frame. This is a really common time for like a sleep regression or like a big developmental leap in the 4 to 6 month time frame. Because what do babies start to do at 4 to 6 months? Call some things out.
Rolling.
Yep. Yes. So they're starting to move. They're starting to move their bodies. They're even just starting to kind of, you'll push your hand away or just hold my hand. Their hand in the mouth. Everything, I'm going to put it in the mouth. You know, they're just, their movement system's coming online. From an immune system perspective, they're starting to put things in their mouth. Their immune system is starting to work on its own now in the 4 to 6 month time period. And the reason why they're sampling their environment, because from a motor or a movement system perspective, they're starting to support their head. They're pushing themselves up in tummy time. They're working on rolling over. The lifting of the head activates an area in the bottom of the brain that really kicks out and activates vision. So it's also one of the reasons why, amongst the many variables to like a 4 month sleep regression, is that maybe prior to the 4 month period, you could kind of put in a little blankie. My son was never like this, but you could put in something a little smells like you and tuck it in. They wouldn't know that it's not you necessarily, but now They can see farther than just a little bit in front of them. They can see clear across the room. They might wake up, and if you're not in the room, go, where's mom? I'm gonna scream for mom until she appears. Okay, there she is, now I can go back to sleep. So there's a big leap in the activation of vision. And there's a big leap in the immune system now that we're starting to get a little upright. We're not just a horizontal thing. And we are kicking on the portion of the immune system that is drainage, the drainage pathway, drainage fluids on the head and neck. 4 to 6 months is a really common time for the first ear infections to set in. Because if we're not draining efficiently from the head and neck, and fluids just stay there and they stagnate, has anyone ever been camping? Show of hands if you've been camping. Are you supposed to drink water in a still pond or no? No. Would we drink water out of the very, very brown East Lake? When water is still and stagnant, that's when it breeds bacteria and viruses. Water's meant to be in motion, and the fluid in our body is meant to be in motion. So when things are not draining properly, let's say that child is not mastering this next level of motor development. Maybe they didn't master the previous, and now we're building into it. But let's just say for whatever reason, maybe this child is not getting the opportunity to move their body and to start to lift up and to figure out how to roll. Maybe they're spending a lot of time in a car seat, a lot of time in a bouncer or a container that's limiting their motion. The outside manifestation of that, which a lot of people are aware of these days, or maybe, they're always on their back, is that they make it a flat spot. You guys see babies have a flat spot on their head because they're always in one position? Well, the external manifestation of that lack of motion is maybe we're going to get a flat spot on the skull. The internal manifestation is that maybe we're not lifting up, turning side to side, developing those even symmetrical movement patterns, and maybe we're not draining efficiently. So we're starting to get gunked up in the functioning of the immune system. Because with the head up and with our ability to start draining, we're now moving into the next. Should have been on this slide a little earlier, but this is relevant right now, right? Eat, sleep, poop, motor, immune. Now we're starting to seed the gut and work on the gut development with things that we are being exposed to in our environment, sample the environment, drains down, goes through here, goes into the gut. Interestingly enough, when we're not draining and that water is still and stagnant and builds and breeds bacteria, like I mentioned, this 4 to 6 months, very commonly when the first ear infection will set in for kids, what are they most likely going to be prescribed for an ear infection? Antibiotics. Maybe the stagnation is in the ears, but then they're also kind of getting a sore throat, and then things get stuck in the lungs. Maybe they're being prescribed steroids for a lung infection. The antibiotics and the steroids, what impact is that going to have on the health of the gut? Yeah. So now we've got these sort of two tandem trajectories where we see the child building incrementally through stages of development, and the child's starting to get stuck at different stages of the game. But they're going to still progress forward. Up, now they're going to start to crawl. Up, now they're going to make their way more upright. Up, now they're going to work on more social skills and social Vegas coming online and more behavioral and emotional regulation. They're going to move through these stages, but in order to have a strong neurodevelopmental sequence, it's contingent upon, a healthy immune system happening at the same time. And if we're having some neurodevelopmental delays, there's going to be an impact to the way the immune system is developing. These things are coupled, these things are paired. When we have healthy immune function, healthy motor function, we can develop a strong and healthy sensory system. We can develop a strong and healthy social, verbal communication, all of those things. So these are all interconnected. Brains are built bottom up, back forward over time. Movement matters so much. How many of you are aware that the CDC, which puts out these milestones, metrics that we want most babies to be hitting in certain time frames, they haven't changed them in over 2 decades. They changed them in 2022. Is anybody aware of this change? And there's been a lot of, mixed feelings, mixed impact. There was a lot of really upset in the pediatric community when this happened because they say they changed them so that we're able to have more early intervention and catch things sooner. However, it seems like it's inadvertently made it harder to catch things earlier because they moved a lot of things back. They moved walking back from 12 months to 18 months. They moved talking back by 3 or 6 months. So now, responding 50 words, now they're saying at 3, when really you ought to be able to have a full conversation at age 3. And they removed crawling completely. Here's why this PO'd some people. I'm going to piss some people off in this pediatric community that are working with these kids. Well, if we're talking about the fact that these motor movements are actually really tied into the immune function, we talked about how at 4 to 6 months we raise the head, we get the vision, we sample the environment, we're starting to see the gut. Well, when we crawl, it's usually right around the time that babies are starting solids. And we need that stimulation to help to activate the gut, that cross crawl and the development of the curve in the low back. It all ties in with what the baby's going to be doing in their life. It's as if someone had a brilliant design and there was a purpose and an order to the way that these things are developing and growing. So crawling is, it's important for a lot of reasons, but it's a crucial part of this developmental sequence, and it's so important to crawl before we walk. And it was upsetting for a lot of providers that work with kids to see crawling removed and a lot of things being pushed back. Because, like we had talked about, it doesn't change the fact that development's moving forward. It might just make it more likely that we're going to miss things, and it's going to be harder to catch up on things later than it would be if we were addressing things in the moment and being able to support these kids in real time and not being told, your child's just going to grow out of it, let's wait another couple months, let's wait another couple years, knowing that's going to be so much harder for that family in another couple months or a couple years. So, I won't go on a whole tangent about that because I always get a little bit heated talking about that, but the milestones matter. We want to make sure we are supporting this sequence for children as they go through their milestones. And part of crawling as well is that now, right, they're crawling over to like the Tupperware container and they're getting in everything, right? We're sampling the environment, and that's on purpose. So what happened when COVID happened and we started to sanitize everything? Even more so, I think it skewed the bias towards no bacteria in the environment whatsoever always equals safer. Yeah.
We got worse.
Yes. Why is that? I think it's really just skewed the way that we view germs and bacteria as these inherent, demons that must be put at all costs. They've done studies where they looked at cohorts, like groups of kids, a group of kids that grew up in a city environment, like apartment living, lots of concrete, indoor time, Chicago or New York or something, and then kids that grew up on a farm. And they found that the children that grew up indoors, concrete environment, limited exposure to dirt and bacteria and viruses, right, sort of more sterile environment, had a higher incidence on average, not all of them, but the average, higher incidence of asthma and allergies and autoimmune disorders. So really all of the different immune markers were worse in the sterile environment. So we are designed to be able to interact with our environment. And a certain level of exposure to that is going to build the immune system. It's going to build reps in the immune system so that it develops that adaptability. And they discovered in this study that those people that grew up on the farm, they had a stronger immune response later in life. When they were 20 and 30 years old, when the immune system was more fully matured, they still had a stronger immune response. They've done similar studies on like first and second siblings. I don't really remember this one exactly because I'm remembering this in this moment and I want to share it with you, but I definitely know that they've done studies on like first siblings and then second, and like how much more robust the immune system is of second and subsequent children, families and households with pets in the house, the things that sort of seem to make things dirty, an older kid coming home from daycare and exposing your baby to all the things. Well, maybe that baby gets more immune system reps early on because they're having a lot of exposures, but long term, their immune system's going to be rock solid because they've had all those exposures. So it's just flipping the way that we've thought about a lot of these things traditionally. Other things that our body does with beautiful, brilliant, intelligent design that we fear a lot of the time, fevers, coughs, symptoms we want to suppress. Usually, if a child has a fever, what do we want to do? You want to bring the fever down. And it's hard to see your child having a fever. They're lethargic, they're hot, they're suffering, they're not like themselves. It's hard to look at that, it's hard to watch that. But what they're now discovering, what we're now sort of acknowledging in certain corners of the internet and in the world is that fevers serve a purpose, And our immune system, we've got these sort of fighters, these soldiers that are going to battle with the invaders inside of the body, and we give a suppressant or a reducer. The fever's going, the body temperature's jacked up, the soldiers are working very, very hard. It might not look pretty, but they're working, they're fighting. We give the suppressant and they go to sleep. They're not fighting anymore. It might reduce the fever, but it's going to prolong the course of the illness almost always, because then when the medication wears off, the fighters are back at it, they've got less time to work on it. Maybe, over time we're giving. We never really give them a chance to fully go through and nip in the bud. Also, what happens when you give your child the medication? First, they were like all lethargic, they're not feeling well. You give them, and then they're back to normal. They're good, they're running around again. They look like they're feeling fine, they're not feeling fine, So we're also potentially prolonging, could we see how that might prolong the stage of the illness when we're sort of just masking that, right? And there's a time and a place. I'm not here to say never take medication, but on the next slide, we're gonna break even deeper into the way that the immune system works, and how to really build a responsive immune function over time. Cough is the same thing, right? A cough is your body trying to expel something that it does not want inside anymore. And when we suppress the cough, where does all that gunk go? Stays inside your body. Your body wanted to get it out. So these are just philosophical questions to help us reframe. They've got a lot of books on this. Eat dirt. It's like it's a provocative title, but really it's just all to say that, like, what are some ways in which we can acknowledge and just shift the thinking of what can my body be trying to tell me or trying to accomplish with this unpleasant symptom? What can my child's body be trying to accomplish with this unpleasant system? And how do I support, which we're going to talk about with your handouts still later, but soon, how do we work with the body in that versus shutting down what the body is trying to do? The body is so intelligent and it's probably got things out of it and it's onto something good. You guys down to go a little bit deeper into the immune system, into the science of the immune system? So when we're around, maybe 5 or 7 months old, we develop these two different sides, these two different modes of the immune system function. We have our Th1 and our Th2. H basically means like helper or fighter cell. Two different modes. And I'm going to use, we were just talking about how I can't watch any violent shows, but I know an analogy that's a castle analogy. So I never watched Game of Thrones. Dr. Mackay is rewatching Game of Thrones right now with his girlfriend, and I can't watch violent things. But what I imagine to be true of Game of Thrones is like you have a castle. This is maybe not true. In the Renaissance times, there's like a castle, and there's a lot of guards protecting the castle from invaders. There might be like a moat. There's watchers that are going to look and like spot out anyone that's even on the horizon trying to invade. They're going to have cannons. They're going to have all these layers of defense to keep the invaders out. All of those fighters. And when someone comes in and tries to attack, boom, it's going to knock them out. The castle might get a little rowdy, but it's working on it. It's saying, you're coming up, not in here, out you go. That's like the Th1, the expressive part of the immune system. It's working, it's fighting, it's kicking butt, it's getting things out of there. The Th2 portion of the immune system is kind of like a Trojan horse. Do you guys all remember the Trojan horse? I'm taking you back to school with the PEMDAS and with the Trojan horse. But the Trojan horse is like you have all the guards out front on the castle being like, we're going to keep the castle safe. Somebody sneaks in a Trojan horse and they're like, okay, I guess this is cool. This must be a gift. Come on in. Right this way. We're hanging out. Well, are you friend or foe? I guess you're okay. You're hanging out okay. We're all going to go to sleep tonight. They're going to come out of the horse. They're going to all assimilate. We're all hanging out. We all go to sleep. We wake up in the morning. Oh no, they weren't friends. They were invaders. They've taken over. Now it's too late. This is the suppressive side of your immune system. It's like, not right now, not right now. It's not going to identify invaders. It's going to let them in, and then it's going to go, oh, it's too late. I wish I shouldn't have let that in. Most of us, with the stress that we're under, so you've probably all heard me talk about, those of you that are patients around, you've heard me talk about the gas pedal, the brake pedal. And for those of you that are not, I talk about the gas pedal being like the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, go, go, go. The parasympathetic being rest and digest, like the body's brake pedal. When we're on gas pedal all the time, we're in the suppressive immune response. It's kind of like the reason why we as adults get sick usually like on a weekend when we finally take time off. When we're going throughout our week and we're working 12-hour days and we're doing this, we're doing that, dropping off this and that, the body's like, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for this, I guess we're okay, not right now, can't find it. And then you actually take that time to like decompress. You're like, finally, it's Friday night, I can like watch a movie and chill. And then you wake up Saturday morning, you're like, I actually feel terrible. Why am I sick now? The same reason I would get sick on breaks from school all the time and finally get that time off, my immune system would be like, now's the time that we're gonna start to work through this. So, the suppressive immune system, we also perpetuate this by, again, repressing always what the body is trying to do, right? We're just always repressing and we're letting them in deeper and deeper and deeper. So we want to activate this expressive response as much as possible. And that's where it comes back to the signaling in the nervous system. If we're caught in a stress loop, a sympathetic nervous system loop, it's going to be really hard for us to get onto that expressive side and just be knocking things out as they come, right? This is also why there's a time and place. There's a time where you're like, I need to just get some sleep. I'm working in the morning. I'm going to take the thing to suppress the thing so I can get through it. There's a time and a place. What I'm really talking about here is like long term. Every single time something comes, it's never a good time. It's never a good time. It's never a good time. And again, I get it. It's never a good time for me to get sick either. But we just want to make sure that we're aware of, especially with our children, creating a pattern where we're from the get-go, never letting the expressive immune system do its thing. So how do we activate the expressive immune function of the body? The core four, the things that I started on the first slide, right? And most importantly, harmonizing the signaling of what's telling our body to be in the gas pedal or brake pedal, which is the nervous system, which is the harmonizer of the immune system. And we do that in two ways. One, by helping with plumbing and draining, by helping with movement. And two, by helping to reorganize and create more responsiveness in the nervous system so that we're responding appropriately to our environment. And sometimes that means launching a response that maybe isn't going to feel the best, but it's going to be really fun and useful long term. Does that make sense so far? I think it took a long time without taking any breaks for questions. Any immediate, like, oops, stop. I have a question about that. We'll do questions. Yeah.
Pediatrician at the regular high school at 6 months.
Yeah, I know. So here's the thing too, when we talk about fevers too, there's exceptions to the rule, of course. Normally, we can let a fever run its course in more situations than we think. A child with maybe a history of febrile seizures or an infant under 2 months. Yeah, there's going to be situations where you might want to have someone helping you navigate it, but who are you listening to? Who are the people that support you, and how do they think about the body? Are they going to be aligned with your values and philosophies or not? What was that?
I said Elise.
I called her. There you go. And sometimes it's it's a wise woman family member like that. Those are the people that you need in your ear, talking you through, coaching you through these situations, leaving space for the body to do what it needs to do. And they have more and more. I think we need 1,000 more because I send so many referrals to the same 3 people that are all booked out like 7 months in advance. But pediatric naturopaths, like you can find practitioners that are more holistically minded that might have solutions for your child's fever, like, put wet socks on them before they go to bed, or rub, lime oil on their back, whatever. There's definitely ways that we can support the body's expressive immune system while helping your child be more comfortable and helping the fever break, but we're not suppressing. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because it would be great, and maybe someday, and there are people that are more holistic minded you can get support with, and I think it's good to have someone that you don't trust that you can sort of like triage these things with, because I know it's a lot easier when it's talking about someone else's kid, and then when it's your kid, you're like, and no one is going to care more about your child than you, period. Nobody, the next best thing is going to be a family member. No one's really going to be the best at the level that you are. Well, hey, that's even better. That's even better. What a heck of a godmother, but I love to have a godmother in my family. Okay, beautiful. So now let's get to the goodies and the things that you guys kind of, probably wanted me to discuss and talk about. But the reason I talk about this too is that, like, you'll see that on this handout when we talk about this, like, nature's medicine cabinet, this is, I think it's designed like a sports bracket. I don't know much about sports. It looks like a sports bracket. We have, like, you move through in a certain order, a certain sequence. There's that word again. We have the health pillars on the top because these are non-negotiable. I think it's very easy to throw a lot of money and resources on all the things underneath those top 4 things, that as soon as something comes up, let's check in with these first 4. There's probably more than likely something that you can do to double down on those first 4 things first before you start adding in all the other stuff. And you know, I mean, I'm a parent, and you guys are parents, and there's 1,000,001. You go to Sprouts, and they're having the vitamins, so you're like, I don't know, should I get? I've gotten so much crap. I go there all the time when I'm doing the sale. I buy a bunch of crap. I'm like, this looks good. I'm reading it. This is gonna help with this. Great, awesome. Starts with those first 4 things. We double down on that first. And for kids, I mentioned exercise and play. It's not just exercise and movement. It's play. It's like joyful movement. That's also so important for the development of their nervous system. Just free time to just play. Use their imagination the same way that it's important for babies to have unrestricted tummy time on the floor, not in an empty container. Older children need that too. And a lot of children with the formative schools, which is another tangent that I won't fully go on, but like they're expected to just sit still for however many hours a day when their bodies are literally wired for movement and they're just dying to move their bodies. Like giving them that time, especially if they've been cooped up in school all day. I know it's sort of an obvious thing, but like how can we build that in so that it's like a non-negotiable and the most important thing? Like we do it in the morning before school, right? We change our habits as a family so that we're allocating that time for play. Also, because children will naturally play in ways that are going to stimulate their nervous system. They just have, you know, they're jumping, they're doing this, they're activating the vestibular system. They're just like gonna be doing what they need. You know, if we just let them loose, let them do the things. So exercise and play. Eating clean, healthy foods. I'm gonna add an asterisk to this too, which is like eating seasonally when possible. You know, in a lot of like traditional cultures, like I know in like ancient Chinese medicine, in like the winter time, you want to be eating really warming food so that you're keeping your body, your immune system warm when it's cold outside, like broths and soups and whatnot. And then in the summer, when it's hot outside, you want to counteract that heat with like lots of smoothies and fruits and vegetables and cooling, hydrating things. And then, you know, Mother Nature has a rhyme and a reason to things. Eating things that are in season are usually going to be more nourishing for your body, have greater sort of bioavailability of nutrients and whatnot. So we start with the pillars, and then we trickle down into the everyday boosters and immune system builders. These are things that you can add in, certainly like on a seasonal basis, or if you're having exposure to things at school. For example, the children go back to school, you know, there's going to be a big exposure to everything. This would be a good time to start to add in and to build in these boosters and builders. Whole food vitamin or smoothie. I put whole food vitamins because a lot of vitamins are made with synthetic forms of the thing. So let's say you're taking like vitamin C. Well, you might be able to find a synthetic vitamin C, or you might be able to find a whole food vitamin C that's basically made with like very concentrated oranges and citrus and foods that are high in vitamin C, just concentrated down into a pill. So whole foods are usually going to be more easily integrated and absorbed by your body because your nervous system recognizes what those things are. Sometimes we try to just engineer the compound. You're like, look, it's the same thing. It's not necessarily the same thing. An example is with pregnancy that maybe some of you are familiar with. It's like folate versus folic acid. There's a synthetic version, and now it's becoming more common knowledge. You want to take the folate, you want to take the form that is found in foods. If you can get them from foods, great. If you can't, find a whole food supplement that's condensing the foods into a highly potent version that you can take and consume. Vitamin C, vitamin D. I also like vitamin D, kind of like peaked out a little bit, trying to getting up close with like vitamin D. This strengthens your immune system, and it does. You get a lot of sunlight in San Diego, which is good for vitamin D production. However, a lot of people will still be deficient, especially moms, especially breastfeeding moms. It really depletes your vitamin D. I had mine checked like 6 months ago, and it was crazy low, and I had no idea. So I'm like, I get sunshine every day. Breastfeeding really depletes your vitamin D, which can impact your immune system. Omega-3s and probiotics. Probiotics are really good for the gut. Zinc, vitamin A, bone broth, fermented foods, fruits and vegetables. These are all really good immune system builders, and you'll notice they're in the second tier. We are prioritizing these things higher than the immune system fighters, which are going to be short-term. Now it's going down. You've got somebody approaching the castle, and you really want to initiate the response in the body. And again, the reason these are structured in this way is we don't necessarily want to be using all of the immune system fighters all the time. If we're throwing everything out of the entire time, the immune system thinks it's always in a state of needing to fight, and it's going to be less efficient when it does need to fight. So we try to just not go too crazy. But we've broken down specific things, specific conditions, and specific things that can be helpful under each one of those things that might be approaching the castle of your child's body. So we have natural antimicrobials, and starting over here on the right, just to toss a couple things out here: oil of oregano, colloidal silver, garlic, elderberry, golden seal. These are all things that can be found pretty much all across the board. You can find all these things at Sprouts now, but I definitely have specific, if you want specific recommendations or specific brands, I'm happy to provide those for you if it is helpful. Sore throat, again, you'll notice that all these things with the sore throat are not to try to repress or take away anything. They're simply ways to make the body more comfortable while the body's doing what it needs to do. So all of these we're working with the body. We're not suppressing or changing the course of what the body is attempting to do. We're just trying to make our child more comfortable. Cough, sinus congestion, you'll notice again, we are not listing any anti-congestants. We're not listing any cough suppressants. We are simply putting in things that are either going to help to bolster function of the nervous system or help make the child more comfortable. Humidifier or neti pot, nebulizer could also fall into this category to help support respiration and make that easier. Fevers, essential oils, homeopathic remedies, apple cider vinegar, compress, or bath. There's a lot of like tips and tricks that I know a lot of homeopathic and holistic pediatricians have. I don't know all of the tips and tricks, but again, that's why it's good to have someone that's got all the different little remedies and all the different things you could try. The lime oil on the spine was another one I heard about recently that I hadn't heard of before that can be very helpful. And then earaches. And really, if you were to go up the chart all the way with health pillars, I'm going to share some scans. Do you know what time it is, Dr. Mackay? I have no idea.
I don't know my
Okay, 6:47. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you for that. I would have guessed it was 6:30. Earaches, ear infections in particular. But it's like that's when they respond so well to chiropractic care. It's like a no-brainer. Especially because with ear infections nowadays, they're not always checking if it's like viral or bacterial. They're just like, here's the antibiotics. So again, having people that are thinking of things a little bit more holistically and not just being like, hey, here's my medication at it. Because over time, we also know, and this just goes back to something I realized I didn't mention on the over sanitization slide, and when we were over sanitizing everything, there is a holistic nurse practitioner that's in our like PX Docs network, and she does like toxicology screenings on kids. Like she'll do urine tests. It was interesting, so when we were sanitizing everything, she was noticing in her practice, and a lot of other like nurse practitioners, pediatricians were noticing the same thing in the more holistic camp that are testing for these things, that like the chemical toxicity levels were so much higher because the kids were getting antibacterial everything, these heavy duty, everything sanitized, everything. And a lot of those chemicals are endocrine disruptors. They can impact and disrupt the functioning of the hormonal system with children and with adults and with humans. So there's always a trade-off, that we're thinking about. So it jogged my memory because I brought out this hand sanitizer to show an example of, first and foremost, hand washing is always going to be really your best bet. Definitely still wash your hands. I'm not saying just like be filthy and just embrace it. Wash your hands, we just maybe don't sanitize every single little thing all the time, maybe. And when we want to use a hand sanitizer, something like a simple essential oil and alcohol, based hand sanitizer will do the trick. So we put these in all of the diaper changing station in response to someone requesting hand sanitizer. No, but yes, this is also an organic hand sanitizer there for you to use for yourself and for your child. Okay, just to review, we want to make sure that we are doing things in the right order, never neglecting things that are going to help our nervous system, even if they seem unrelated. Your child playing, things that bring joy, snuggles. These are co-regulating for the nervous system. They absolutely matter when your child is sick. Skin to skin, it's going to help regulate your child's temperature if they have a fever, even if they're not a baby. These are the principles that if last to the test of time that are going to help support the nervous system. Obviously getting adjusted, supporting the nervous system first and foremost, because that's what's signaling everything in the body that is going to create that immune response or lack of suppressive. We want to sleep well, eat clean, healthy foods, exercise, play, move, and we want to do the best we can, right? We don't have to be perfectionists. We don't want to add another layer of stress to try to do everything perfectly and then freak out if we don't, because ultimately we're trying to avoid the stress response. So like, live a little, 80-20, 90-10, whatever it is that makes this realistic and doable for you. It's about what you do most of the time versus what you do every single time without fail. And the fact that you guys are all here, obviously you care, and obviously you're doing the work and you're taking wonderful care of your family. So I acknowledge you for that as well. And we can think about these boosters and builders just as extra credit. They're not going to be end-all be-all. In the same way, I've got another birth analogy for you because I'm just full of birth analogies always, but like in the same way that you can't really, like, you could chug castor oil or you're going to sex a bunch of times, like you can't really have the baby come out unless, you're full on getting induced until the baby's ready. You know, there's a lot of ways that people say, do this and do curb walking and this and that. Yes, and let me know when they're ready. You know, the system's gonna do its thing if it needs to. We can throw all the elderberry at it, but that might not do the trick. We have to focus on these 4 pillars first. They're foundational. Let me just see if this next slide is going to load. Do I have another slide? I put like a case study on here for ear infections because this was a little girl that we're caring for in our office presently, and I really just wanted to give an example of how some early struggles with motor nervous system has led to a situation where this child was having like double ear infections, multiple double ear infections, and her mom had tried all the things. She was seeing a naturopath and doing all the supplements, and the mom was working on gut health, like doing a lot of these really wonderful things, but missing this key component. So they were seeing kind of some change, but then kind of just not really. And we started adjusting Peyton, and sure enough, the ear infection's resolved. And she initially, when she first started getting adjusted, she was like draining a lot of fluids because that drainage system was coming back online. She had to catch up. So it wasn't like we adjusted her. She's like, no more ear infection. My immune system's awesome. It took a number of months to bring that nervous system along to help that immune system catch up because, like we talked about, the order really matters. And sometimes behind the scenes, the body's got to do work to catch up to get to a place of homeostasis. And she had been sick for like from September to December, like straight before she started care. That was sort of the last straw for the mom. Mom was like, I can't stand this anymore. She was literally already sick. And it took a couple months, but you can see on her scans initially there was like a lot of stress going on, and there was a lot less stress when we addressed that component. And now she can continue doing the diet detoxes. This is how she's working with the naturopath, but we had that foundation first, and her nervous system can actually handle those changes and like incorporate those in the most efficient way possible. Another slide. Let's see. So if you guys are patients in the spirit of these foundational things, we are offering all of you a free boost adjustment for being here tonight, because use boost adjustments. Boost adjustments are basically an extra adjustment when something comes up. When the kids return to school and there's extra stressors, when things are on the fritz in the family, for whatever reason, you're like, we need the extra support, add a boost adjustment. Ramp these things up first before we add the other things. And we're also, if you have any family members that you would like to get scanned or get started under care, or anyone that wants themselves or their children scanned, we're doing a special discount for the first 2 visits. So you can talk to Paris or Rachel about that. It's normally $225 to the first 2 visits. We give like a VIP voucher if there's an existing patient that's referring you, which is $150. That's currently the lowest that we've been offering over these last 6 months, and to infinity because we've been discounting less. We are offering it for $97 tonight. If you feel it on your heart that you want to get started, you want to get scanned, or there's someone in your family that you want to get started, you can talk to the team about that, take advantage of that. And you get free boost adjustment if you're a patient. So I do have a last slide that says get scanned. And also, again, like we talked about, just to circle it back around, continue to ask questions, follow the right people. Even the people that you're following online, follow the right people that are, and always, always, always go with providers only ever that are listening to you and that are taking the time to answer your questions and that are acknowledging that like you have a mom gut or a dad gut and that you know what's best for your kid, and also that your kid's body knows a little something or two, and it's ought to be a huge red flag if there's just a complete lack of acknowledgement. Even if you're like, hey, I went to this crazy workshop and they said this, that, and the other, I'm like, nope, shut that down, nope, that can't be. Maybe it's a yellow flag. Maybe we're like, I don't know.